on a computer where you kill people, or beat them over the head anyway, and shooting people from a TV screen in a drone on a computer screen. And in the kids section here, I asked them to consider that, whether it's really quite the moral thing to, because not only does it make the operator invulnerable, and therefore there's no incentive ever to stop a war in which the killer is totally invulnerable. Why would you stop if nobody can ever hurt you? And normally in a war, the people on the battlefield, some side's winning and the other side isn't, but everybody's vulnerable, at least to some extent. But these people are invulnerable, totally invulnerable. And the other thing is, when you're downgrading human beings to kind of slightly fuzzy images on a camera, or when you're targeting a car in which you can't even see who's inside it because they're particularly used for targeted assassinations of cars, you're told there's an Hamas leader or something in the car, but there's probably 4 or 5 people in the car. You don't know who's in there, but it downgrades the value of those lives because they're just fuzzy grey images. You just press a button and everything happens. The same is really true, though, of all of these weapons. This Apache is invulnerable. The Palestinians don't have any weapons that they can shoot this, or the F-16, or the tank, or the bulldozer. The people sitting in these machines are invulnerable. And, well, perhaps we'll come on to that message in a minute. I just want to draw your attention to a couple more things here. First, here's a scaffolding tower, which I discovered by looking at this picture and asking, is something the Israelis do. The soldiers, when you do see soldiers, they come and erect a scaffolding tower and go up and get a view around, and they're directing operations. So again, an interesting, perhaps interesting little detail. There's a couple of Israeli with mortars. Here's a tower block being shelled, and 23 dead bodies, I think it is, when I last counted. I want you to draw your attention to the difference between these styles of drawing. There's a lot of, I think this is an excellent piece of art. There's a lot of tension, it seems to me, in this bulldozer pushing. The kid's really interested in the way that the thing works, and that's a very stylized design. It's very elegant and balanced. It's a little kid. This is a very scruffy sort of drawing, but it does a different kind of job. This is a very detailed, factual drawing with a little bit of allegory here. The light of Gaza, because of course they're short of oil, so you have to have oil lamps, but it's also a symbol that the light won't be extinguished. The fight goes on, if you like. But then we come to this. This is neither real nor not real. The helicopters are very real helicopters, but I don't think this is Gaza. I think this is Gotham City. And I think the child that painted this has made the war already into something mythical and beyond themselves. It's something that this is a world of unreality that they don't exist in. These kids do exist in it, but I think this one's gone somewhere else. So we come to Tal al-Hawa. Now, it's good for you exercise, You should say thank you. Thank you very much. Can you see back there? Can you see back there? Yes, please do. If you can see the pictures, though. Tal al-Hawa, as I told you before, is a suburb on the southern side of Gaza City. Actually, the British consulate's in Tal al-Hawa, but they didn't get quite that far. Actually, the British sub-consul's a Palestinian character. He's a really good guy, actually. He needs lots of support. I was once phoning Cairo embassy, and they said to me, "Can I speak to the consul there?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll get him." They said, "Wait a minute, is it a Brit or a native?" And I said, "It's a Palestinian, if that's what you mean." And he said, "Yes, so we won't speak to him then." So there you go. Some of these pictures I commissioned. I was taken to a school and I was addressed. They collected some of their best artists together, and I made a little speech to them, and I said, "I want you to give me pictures that tell the British public what you've been feeling in this last few weeks and months. And that was done. Others I collected from youth groups where they were using them as therapy, and they just gave me sheafs and sheafs, and I've selected just a few. Others I went to schools that weren't prepared for me and just talked to the kids and collected up. But these pictures were painted at the time of this battle in Islamic relief offices where these kids were taken for safety. So these are the nearest thing to live action footage in kids' drawings. There's no point, I think, in going through every one. The point I made in my blog when I first uploaded them when I was in Gaza is that they're remarkably consistent. And if you've got a kind of architectural eye, you can reposition yourself and pick up most of the views. This is a particular view. I mean, I've actually stood there, and that's a really accurate picture. It's astonishingly accurate, really. And that building really does look like that. Small building in front of these big flats. And this road is a dual carriageway, one track of which is tarmac still, and the other track of which has been completely ripped up because the tanks have been going up and down it. And there is this big open space here, which is where the tanks could assemble. That's why this became an area of attack. We see the kind of standard things here. Then we see kids with their heads or not necessarily kids, these are adults perhaps, with their heads, stray arm there, that's a shell. Here's more stray limbs. And here, particularly, we can see somebody's looking after somebody, but here's two stray legs and some stray arms. So, is this just the way that kids paint death? Well, no, it's not, actually. It turns out that the Israelis have a weapon called a dime bomb. And a dime bomb is a fragmentation bomb, a shrapnel bomb in essence. It's packed with little tiny fragments, about a centimetre cube, or less than that, of very, very, very heavy metal. And we say in here that it is a fission product, because somebody did some research for me. But anyway, more recently people are saying, well, probably it's not that actually. It's probably not plutonium, in fact depleted uranium or something like that. It could be just simply something very heavy like, I'll think of a name of a heavy metal in a minute. But it is very heavy. And the other facts I got on the ground in Gaza myself from a French arms expert who was coming out to investigate this very weapon. These tens of thousands of little fragments explode out of the bomb all around, obviously, at 1,000 kilometres an hour, and they hit you, each one with a force of 2 tons. And they're that small. I'll pass this round, but you can see that that's how small they are. They are on the back of an ashtray, and that's a 10 shekel piece, which is about 20 pence size. That sort of thing. Would you like to pass that round? Thank you. And the little fragments travel so fast that they burn up in the air, just like a satellite re-entry that's gone wrong. They just burn up. So after the bomb's gone off, if it's in open space, there's absolutely no trace of it. It's just disappeared. And it was a mystery weapon, and you can read blogs of the early part where they're talking about mystery weapons that disappear, and this is it. Some people think this is the Fallujah bomb, as it's sometimes called, that because if those fragments were depleted uranium or something similar, then they could be having these genetic effects that we're now seeing in Fallujah. But other people say, no, it's not that. There's yet another bomb that we actually still don't know anything about. So, I don't know. I'm not a weapons expert. I only can tell you what I do know. But what I do know is that those tiny red-hot pieces travelling so fast and so hard just simply go through flesh like it doesn't exist. And they smash bone, and at joints where bones are held to other bones, that's where they sever the most easily. And that's why you get this signature behaviour of severed arms and limbs. If you're close enough, of course, you just die. But if you're that little bit further away, you get severed arms. And, of course, this is a weak point too. So you get decapitations, as we see here. And I usually say at this point, and I say it very carefully this time, after some Zionists made me say something different or wanted me to have said something different last time. What I say is, if the Israelis wanted to invent a bomb that was designed specifically to kill children, this is that bomb. But I am not saying they did that. But it is a bomb that's very effective at killing children. Why? Because children have thinner arms and legs than adults do and are less likely to survive this particular kind of attack. It's useless against buildings. It only kills people. These little fragments hit a wall, they don't do any damage and they just drop. And that's how these fragments have become available. So if we read round, we get to this very complex one, which I'll just briefly touch on. This is very detailed drawing. Here's a resistance fighter hiding behind a building that a tank is shelling. Here are some people sheltering in a mosque, which an Apache is shelling. Here are some resistance fighters marching somewhere we don't know where. Here's some people putting somebody into an ambulance. Here's an aid truck coming along. One of these aid bags has written on it UNICEF. And over here is an Israeli soldier who's got people lined up in hoods against the wall, and he's shot one. You can pick the bits you like out of any of these pictures. But this sums it up to me. Phosphorous bombs, which I haven't talked about because you've all heard about them, dropping on a block of flats, and an ambulance being deliberately shelled. And as I said before, the kids' stuff, which is by far the most interesting to read than the adult texts, asks the question to kids, who do you think's bravest, the ambulance driver or the F-16 driver? Who's the guy who's risking his life? Now, we also have the psychological discussion here. What is all this doing to the kids in terms of their psychology? The kids that are dead, so we say a prayer or whatever you want to say, and we move on from that. But there are 1.5 million people still alive in Gaza that have lived through this, and as we saw with Samaher, they often suffer the most. There's a psychology like this. It goes like this. If I'm afraid that I'll fall over and break my leg, fall off a cliff and hurt myself, and then I do fall off a cliff and hurt myself, actually my fear is ended. And once the leg's been rebuilt, I no longer have to be afraid because I know the extent of the damage. If I'm afraid that I'm going to be blown up by a helicopter, and I'm blown up by a helicopter, I get my prosthetic legs, but I know the limit and it's finished. And I can get on with my life. But if it doesn't happen to me, it only happens to my friends, but it might happen to me at any moment, that's an intolerable fear. That's an unquantifiable fear that just magnifies and magnifies on itself. I talked to you about Samaher before, and that's what she has. She never was there, she never saw it. She just worries about it all the time. And it just... So what do you do when a child is traumatised? And here we have the discussion with a little learned quote at the end. This was written to me, by the way, by a play therapist. What you need to do when somebody's traumatised, here's an example I use. When a kid falls over and scrapes its knee, what do? You do two things. You put Germaline on the knee and you give it a cuddle. Which one of those two actually is the medicine? It's the cuddle. Absolutely. The Germaline's a placebo, more or less. And it's the same here. But the point is, if you live in a family where you've seen your father, possibly killed or humiliated by the Israelis, or simply reduced to penury and poverty and unable to feed the family, a disgrace in an Islamic society, whether we like it or not, that's the kind of society it is, then you don't have anybody strong enough to bear the weight of your fears, because you don't talk about your fears. We all know this from personal experience. You've got a little problem, you want somebody who you think is strong and brave and wise to talk to about it. If you're girly, you want a girly chat, you don't pick the girlfriend who's a pisshead and is going to tell everybody else, right? You want somebody you can have who you feel is strong enough to take what you're talking about. Now, how much more important is that if you've got a real trauma? You're so repressed you can't get it out. So psychiatrists use drawing to help kids to get their trauma out on paper so that they can actually identify them and talk about them. But the point is, it needs to be